you'll have 30, well, you'll have as long as you need to introduce yourself, but make it really short so we all have time to ask questions. I will ask the council members to ask a question and not make a speech when they ask the question. Okay, so introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Ilango Ganga. I've been a 16-year resident in Cupertino. I have 25 years of experience in the industry, working on as a principal engineer and a networking architect. I have held leadership roles in and management roles in architecture, engineering management, and industry standards development. I'm an innovator. I have like number of patents on my name, and I also work with industry delegates to bring them together in order to set standards that for the broader good of the industry. I wanted to give back to the community and help the community by bringing my skills, people skills, as well as technology skills and management skills to the community. Great.
So we'll each ask a question and try to keep answers short so we each get a chance. So in terms of bicycling, what's your experience? How often do you bicycle around Cupertino in general?
So I'm not a biker. I don't bike for commute. I actually walk, and I frequently walk on the trails during the work days. Actually, I use the San Thomas Aquino Trail, and also on the weekends, that's the San Thomas Aquino Trail that runs in the Santa Clara. And then I also, on the weekends, I do frequently go on, hiking trips. And as well as on the evenings, I take stroll on my neighborhood, like doing normal errands and things like that. And as well as recreation purposes.
And you also applied for technology, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
That's my second.
Okay, that's great. Oh, now you want to go?
Yes, we are.
So how do you think the city should assess and prioritize our different projects?
Okay.
Since there are so many demands and challenges.
That's correct. So that's the main concern I have as well. Because if you look at the 2016 bike plan, look at the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 projects, we have actually set about $18 million as an estimate. And then if you look at what we did in 2017-18, we did the capital improvement budget, and about like $7.2 million have been allocated for the projects there, which includes the improvements. And if you look at it, $5 million have gone to the McLellan area projects alone. So what we need to do is to do a cost-benefit analysis to make sure that what really impacts the people the most, and then go for that one which has the broader impact on the community. If you look at the total biking network that we are talking about, we are actually developing about like 25 miles of biking network in the city. We have 25 miles now, and then we are going to add another 25 miles, about like 50 miles total. And then of those, biking network, we need to prioritize projects which are having the major impact. And the ones which you can look at it is the boulevard projects, and as well as the where you are putting class 4 bike lanes, as well as like class 2, and the enhanced bike lanes and buffered bike lanes. Those are the ones which we need to focus on. And also in order to help this neighborhood, we need to also focus on the class 3 bike lanes, which actually goes through the standard neighborhoods. So the main thing is focus on the corridors and focus on the residential streets where you can bring people to the corridors.
Great. Rod?
Yeah, so I would follow up, since you specifically understand the 2016 bike plan. The council's priority has been to create, first priority has been to go from Vista to the Civic Center and Civic Center onto Cupertino High. Do you think that's the right priority?
So if you look at that one, that's one of the priorities. That's why I would look at the overall big city as a whole. Yes, definitely if you look at McLellan is one of the major corridors where it's a troublesome corridor, right?
Yeah.
The next one, if you look at the Dianza, is another one which is actually a troublesome corridor. Stevens Creek is a troublesome corridor. You need to step back and look at overall how it helps the overall city, and then focus on projects on all of them. And I would say, yes, McLellan is an important corridor, and we need to focus on that one as well. As well as we also need to focus on Stevens Creek, because most of the accidents actually happen in Stevens Creek, Dianza, McLellan, Homestead, and those are the areas. And we need to focus on that. And the important part is also the intersections. That's where majority of the accidents, both pedestrian as well as the bike accidents, happen in the intersections. And we need to be focusing on the places where we are going to have a lot of problems, where the streets are not safe, and where you're having, the intersections are not safe, and that's where you need to be focusing on.
So prior input said we should focus on the routes that the students would most appreciate, and that's why we didn't think we'd have a lot of students on Stevens Creek Boulevard, as contrasted to routes that would be interior to the main.
That's right. So student, of course, the students are also important, right? If you look at who are the people who are actually biking and walking, if you look at it in the whole of Cupertino, we're talking about 0.7% of people, bike or walk for commute. And then if you add other students, right, that's about like 5% of the students. That's the estimate again, right? 5% of the students, popular body actually walk. So which means that we need to be focusing on the residential streets which is closer, because most of the people are coming from the residences going to the schools. And we need to focus on all those residential streets to make sure that they are easier for walking. And most of the time, if you look at it, a lot of people actually walk than bike to school, right? And we need to encourage people to walk to schools because it's close proximity. They don't have to take the bike. They don't have to worry about the bike racks and things like that. So definitely we need to be helping, students get to the schools faster.
Okay, John?
So I would kind of ask about, the bike routes for kids. And we have this program, Safe Routes to School, but probably most of that is in residential areas. And so then what can we do? I mean, we realize that if we, on the more common streets, removing one side worth of parking for bike routes would, really be a struggle with residents. But what else, or how do we address that? Make more routes for school. For elementary schools, we have so many, so it's short distances. But high schools, we just have a couple. So
Okay, let him answer, no speeches.
well, I'm asking a question. It's not speech. So for those that do have, a lot of kids that would use it or potentially use it, what can we do? What would you recommend?
So in the residential streets, so typically there are low traffic in residential streets,
Mhm.
and that's where actually people who wanted to bike, like you can use class 3 bike lanes, have the signs for class 3 bike lanes, and if people are actually driving faster and things like that, you can have like speed bumps or speed tables to help that, and also having traffic calming devices in order for improve the safety. And the other thing is actually walking, right? The other thing, we need to make sure that there is enough pedestrian walkways are there. In some of the neighborhoods, like for example, if you look at in the east of the Cupertino, we have very good pedestrian walkways. It's well connected. But as we go to the west of the Cupertino, it's not so. So in those cases, actually, we can actually take the road space. In fact, that's there already in the plan. Road spaces to make sure that that can be used also for walking. That's a safer walking. And the other thing is actually looking at the buffered bike lanes I was talking about, where the cars are actually buffering your students to walk. That's one thing. And the other thing is also like you can also have additional buffers where you can give additional space so that you are not necessarily colliding with the traffic. Those are the things that you can do. But in the residential areas, that's less of an issue because the traffic is limited. You can have proper signs so that you can have proper calming devices in order for the people to students to walk to school.
All right, thank you. We're out of time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye. Was one video?
That's the last one.
The video is the last one?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so bring in Erik. Jan, you go first. Oh, because I went first. Oh, Darcy, right. I'm sorry, I forgot. Okay, Darcy.
You got a lot on your mind or something?
Yes.
This is Erik.
Hey, Erik.
Right.
Right, so give us a brief introduction, and then we'll ask as many questions as we have time for.
Okay. Mayor and City Council members, I guess I'm an avid bicycle commuter because I have some 20 years of experience of daily bicycle commuting. And I'm currently a daily bicycle commuter to my work in San Jose. So I think I have some understanding of the problems you face trying to move through not only our city but also other citizens out there on the bicycle. And I also, of course, have been working 4 years on the Cupertino Bicycle-Pedestrian Commission, also I'm the Cupertino representative to the BTA, BPAC. And I'm engaged in other packages.
I see.
As a commissioner, you're there to advise the council. It's an advisory role. And tell me a little bit about your process that you've gone through in the last 4 years for balancing the will of the council, the needs of the city, input from the community, and interactions with staff.
Yeah, so we have the most of the input in the community we get is probably the members from the community that come to our meetings. So they're generally, able to speak quite freely in our meetings. So we do listen to what they say and take their opinions into account. This is probably the biggest interaction we have in this respect. Of course.
So how do you balance all these factors? What's your process?
Well, okay, so it's obviously, it's on one hand is the need of, let's say, people who travel on bicycles and walk versus people who, let's say, drive and park cars. Usually that's the biggest problem. At some point, I guess you have to weigh it, what is more important to have this, let's say, if the infrastructure change to facilitate for pedestrians and bicyclists, or is it more important to, maybe, let's say it's a parking complex, preserve the parking, or maybe the parking a little bit further away. So I think these decisions is a little bit hard for the Bike-Pedestrian Commission to do. I think that decision really kind of has to move up to the city council.
All right, so today I was out by Kennedy Middle School and I saw an 8th grader sent us an email complaining about an issue there, and I went out, and indeed, it's a big problem. The vehicles are creating 2 lanes on a 1-lane road. There's no access for bicycles, there's no space anymore. How do you deal with the issue of parents driving their kids to school and making it miserable for cyclists?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one solution to that is to get more kids to get to school by bicycle. I think our schools have a lot of opportunity there to improve. So hopefully that could take care of some of the problems. Obviously, going to be still people driving there. It's very tricky at schools because you have the need of the parents to drop off the kids, as well as people traveling bicycles using that same space. If one can move maybe you could move a bicycle lane a little bit so that it mingles with pedestrians rather than with cars. Maybe that problem can be solved a little bit. I don't think we have really a good solution for that we've implemented here in Cupertino at this point yet.
Right, that's why I want something to implement some
But
kind of traffic
on the top of my
calming.
head, right now you have cars, bicycles, pedestrians, and the bicycles are rubbing shoulder with the cars.
Right.
Have the bicycle rub shoulder with the pedestrians instead,
Okay. All right, thank you.
because there are more similar speeds.
So we have many demands and challenges. How would you assess projects and prioritize them for the city?
So I'm not I think on the Bike-Pedestrian Commission, we try to come up with solutions which are good for improving, pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And maybe we see, where is the biggest need. For example, we have prioritized such facilities that take kids to and from schools. we haven't really, when we make that recommendation, we haven't, necessarily weighed into, well, okay, the people who live on that street may not want their parking. I'm not entirely sure that should be solved in the Bike-Ped Commission, because that maybe is a discussion that needs to involve, more people. So that would be probably something that should be addressed again at the city council.
Ron?
Yeah. Thank you for helping create the 2016 bike plan. The council, previous council had a priority to connect Cupertino High, Civic Center, all the way down to Monte Vista. How do you feel about that priority, prioritizing students getting to school? And what parts do you think, if that's a priority, what parts beyond that do you think are worthy?
I think that's an excellent priority to, these two projects, they connect, it brings a route for many students to and from school, as well as to and from the city, here, that is. The solution along McClellan is, I think, on its way. And large part of this is, maybe not too difficult. Of course, we have the situation with the Regular Creek Trail here, which is going to cause some controversy. I happen to bike on a trail that goes next to a creek every day. So if you're a bicyclist, you realize how important it is to have, bicycle paths which are separated from cars, especially for children. So, I would hope that the residents could, see the value in this. However, maybe there's an opportunity to strike a deal, with the residents. Maybe there's something the city can give the residents if they feel that something's being taken away from them by the trail right next to their property, like I don't know, a reduced setback in the back.
How long is the trail you ride to?
I ride on Homestead, then on Santa Mesoquino Trail. And the path along Santa Mesoquino Trail is probably like 3-4 miles.
Oh, off-road.
We're out of time. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks,
Very
Eric. Thanks
good.
for your work.
So I guess, Charlene is no longer interested. Hopefully Muni is, it's almost time for him. Charlene,
I just want to distribute my profile so that you can have it.
Sure, great.
I forgot to give it at the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
See here, this is Muni. Oh, I can pass it off to you.
That's fine, we got it. All right. Thank you. Muni, can you give a,
I'll just share my profile, so okay, you can go ahead and do that. Can I get a copy of that? I'm gonna have to remember things.
we would like a short introduction so
Yeah.
we have enough time to ask you questions.
Okay, let me get real simple. So,
Okay?
So I've been in Bay Area almost 30 years, and I've been for 8 years. And currently work at Untitled, quite a few companies, tech industry, mostly on the telecommunication side. Management positions, handle global workforce around 1,000 people or so. On the engineering side, handle budgets around maybe $100 million budget and things like that. So generating $3 billion revenue. So that's kind of what I do. Married with 2 kids, and both kids go to schools. And, I strongly believe I need to contribute to that community in some form or shape. So I'd like to spend 10% of my time towards doing things that helps the community.
Okay, thank you. I think John,
Next up. So, trying to improve our biking and pedestrian, so there's the technical challenges, because we don't have all the infrastructure we need, but then there's the community challenges and the impacts. And so, how do you think we can get both of those? I mean, if we're only looking at the technical challenges, we'll find a way, but with the community challenges, how do we do that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the community, I think we need to look at the audience, like who we are trying to serve with the problems we are trying to solve. I'll put the community in three categories, right? So one is the workers that go to office every day, right? So then there's kids that go to school, and then the elderly people, right? So I think the easiest segment to address is kids that go to school, right? So which is getting daily commuters on bikes is a big challenge unless we solve the last mile issue, and there are a lot of challenges along those lines, right? And elderly by definition may not bike, right, because they're very elderly, right? So I think the easiest target is to target the kids and create ways that to encourage kids to bike to school, and that will take care of quite a lot of problems in Cupertino, because almost we have 30,000 kids, 28,000 kids going to school. If you can get them out of the cars, parents' cars, and get them on bikes, that would be the easiest way.
Okay.
Bike paths can be sensitive topics, depending on the alignment. Tell us a little bit about how you would balance out a process for interacting with council, effectuating the will of the council, interacting with staff, taking in public input, as well as doing what's best for the totality of the city.
Yeah. So I think since these topics are very sensitive, community engagement is very important. So I never believe in I know answers to all kind of thing, right? So I always I believe in people, the collective brain trust is more powerful than what I can bring to the table. So I believe in working with the community, right? So I think if we engage with the community and we educate them the pros and cons, and get their buy-in, I think a lot of things that we are trying to do we can accomplish.
So, you're a hardcore bicyclist. How do we get the non-hardcore people to believe that it's safe enough to cycle to school or work? And by the way, there's a lot of elderly cycling, a lot of people that came from other countries that don't drive, living with their children. I see them all the time cycling.
Yeah. So definitely, our roads are not that safe. Like I myself, when I bike, I don't use some of the roads, because they are dangerous. Like people making turns into this shopping complex, they don't watch for another bikers on the bike lane. So I had quite misses along those lines. So I think it's a big challenge trying to get people have to feel safe before they can get on the bikes. I myself, my kids used to bike to school, but ever since that accident, where I hit them wrong, got in an accident, I don't send them on bikes. I drive and drop them. My wife drives. So unless the parents feel safe and the community feels safe, they won't get on the bike. So we need to address that issue. Create bike lanes that people can feel safe, right? So and secure. Right now, I myself don't feel safe, riding on these streets. So.
Thank you.
With so many different demands and challenges, how do you think the city should assess and prioritize different projects?
You mean on the biking front?
Applying pedestrian.
Yeah, so there is always an opportunity cost, right? So you need to look at, we as a community and the government, has to look at, where the money is spent wisely, right? So spending money on, the bike commission and, and related activities is going to deliver the best results, then that's where the money should be spent, right? So I don't know the answer, right, into, where it should go, but I'm a learner. I engage with community and then I work with people. So, and that's how I try to solve problems, right? So.
I guess, and what I mean is big projects, small projects. They are how to evaluate.
So every project, you got to look at return on investment, right? So take for example the Carmen Bridge, that they're talking about, right? So I would like to see a bridge there because it connects the kids on that side, to this side on the schools. But then if there are issues along the way, right, that is a concern for the people that will use that bridge, then nobody is going to get on the bike and just because there's a bridge, they're not going to get on the bike and cross, right? So we have to evaluate in totality, what's the outcome, right? Would we get the desired outcome, if we build a bridge? Then, we got to go and, invest in it. So.
So the previous council was very interested in getting something that would allow students to come to the Civic Center, both from Cupertino High, Ragnart Creek Trail, down McClellan, all the way to Monte Vista. How do you feel about that plan? And do you support it? Would you prioritize other things out of the 2016 bike plan?
So I certainly would support and prioritize it, right? Because, you know, but then at the end of the day, you know, what difference it's going to make, you know, is very important, right? So it's not what spending dollars, you know, unless, you know, we can see value out of it, right? So just because, you know, we create it, people are not going to take to it unless, you know, we educate the community and make them feel safe. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sending an email out.
Sure, yeah.
I see he actually lives on the phone.
Oh.
Yeah.
When do you guys make your decisions?
Behind the barber.
I'm at the end of the interview.
At the end of the night. Oh, at the end of the night, not the end of
Yeah.
the interview.
I know. I
No,
heard it from a lot
it's
of people.
because
After that accident.
what happened was
Hey.
some
See
people are
you.
different committees. They request, yeah. And so they'll vote on all of them at the end. About 9.
Nice to meet you, John.
About
You
9.
spend like 30 to 45 seconds introducing yourself, and then we will ask you questions.
Okay. I'm Wil Fluewelling. I am here because while I was running for school board, I feel like the second biggest issue besides the financials is bike safety. And so I think it's super important. It's one of the city's biggest concerns that we need to address. And professionally, I'm a nonprofit executive and a full-time dad. That's where a lot of my focus is going right now, is getting little man kindergarten and back and dealing with that type of stuff. But I'm begging to get involved, you know? I've done so much cool philanthropic stuff across the nation and up in East Bay and in other parts. And I think my biggest deficiency is what I've been hearing is, you don't do enough local. We don't know enough about you for doing local things. I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's super fair. I'm young and I got time. So this is why I'm at these type of things.
Great. And I think you're first.
Thought I went last time.
You did, but
Oh, you
Rod
did.
went last
Rod
time.
went
so-
last.
Oh, okay. So, to add to the infrastructure that we need, you know, the city's already pretty much maxed out. So we need to add more infrastructure, but the impacts that are gonna be seen on so many of the streets, how do we solve or deal with both the technical challenges, maybe I think are much easier than the community challenge, and understanding the residents and what they will and won't support. So even though we have great ideas, the residents, you know, not getting to a level where there's enough support, what do we do?
Well, we need to, I just read an op-ed in the Merc today. This guy Borenstein said we have 1.5 jobs for every resident. That's too many jobs and not enough residents. So do we, how do we get them off the streets, right? How do we reduce traffic? We make them live closer to their work, all right? Seems simple. Common economics, supply and demand type situation, you can apply that to housing. You know, our rents are ridiculously inflated because there's just simply not enough units for people to live. I'm a proud renter. I've been here for over 10 years. I don't own a home. I don't plan on owning a home. I hate home maintenance. I had fences blow over this past week in the storm. I was so happy, like, I don't have to deal with that. Hey, landlady, fix the fence. So I think we need to get people closer to work, period. Especially teachers. They shouldn't be driving from Manteca to go to work.
So tell us a little bit about your process for dealing with bike ped issues. I sat on a 4 Cities Trail initiative on behalf of Cupertino, and we had overwhelming opposition in Cupertino to particular alignment. More recently, we've had the Ragnart Creek Trail. That actually had quite a bit of support in the immediate neighborhood. It had a fair amount of non-support.
Okay.
But how would you go about balancing the various factors like the will of the council, input from the community, interactions with staff, as well as what would be best for the community.
Okay. I have a pretty specific example I can rely on. So I live over close to the Carmen Bridge proposal. And so over the last year, I've been listening to moms and dads and then the residents that live right on that street. So it's interesting to hear. It's mostly, hey, I don't necessarily want all this foot traffic in front of my house. I've been here forever. I don't want to see this. But it's sort of utilitarian. You know, you have to think the bigger numbers. It's not fair for one person to block a safe route to schools for hundreds of people because they simply don't want to look out their window at certain times of the day and see people biking and walking by. But listening to that person is still so super important. We can't ignore them. We have to listen to them. We have to factor that into the end decision. So the homeowners, the local residents, council, I mean, I don't know how you guys do it. I don't necessarily would think I would have to get too involved with you guys, but and then it would be more staff. I feel like these commissions have to work more closely with staff on the specific projects than necessarily escalating up to your level. Does that make sense?
Thanks. That's a thorough answer. Appreciate it.
All right. So, reading your application. So in some cities, they've decided they will not require parking for new units. And they believe that by doing that, the residents will not own cars and will bike to work. So how does that work? Because what I see is they just park their cars on the street, which makes it even more dangerous for cyclists.
Okay. I think I heard, and one of you might be able to correct me, but I heard we could dig 2 stories down. I mean, start getting more underground parking. You know, if you're going to build an apartment complex, make sure there's parking underground to accommodate those. I don't see why that would be a problem. So the more people coming to live, parking the streets on the cars, I don't see us turning into a mini Manhattan anytime soon, right? And that's probably the only place in America where you can get away with not owning a car. It's sort of the San Francisco area, but we're just not that dense. I don't think that we have to worry about that problem yet. I like underground parking. I think I've read about that, and I think that's a really cool fix.
I didn't like the idea of just not having parking. I thought that was
weird.
bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Underground.
So with the many demands and challenges, the city has limited budget. How do you think we should assess projects and prioritize projects, specifically for bike and ped projects that in the north side?
Safety. How do you put a price tag on safety, right? How do you value a life? We've had kids killed, we've had bikers killed, we've had people killed because people get rushed. You know, they put their blinders on in their cars and they got these 2,000-pound weapons around them, and they think about where they're going the next step, and they're not aware enough. You know, it's a big issue with, I think, society today is we're all plugged in, checking the next text, seeing where we got to go, and we're not aware. And so I think people need to be a little more just present and aware of what's going on in their surroundings.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We're out of time.
See y'all at 7:03.
See you.
Okay, thank you.
House or back housing. So I'll just play that video.
Okay.
If you don't mind me turning off the lights.
So who is this from then? You said?
Gerhard
This is Gerhard.
Oh, he's doing, okay.
Even in combat.
And you can put the backlight on?
First of all, let me thank you
Is that
for
okay?
the opportunity to do this interview by video. I appreciate that as I'm traveling in Germany at this point on business. I am a very active member of the current Cupertino Bicycle Commission, and active invited of bicyclists as well, both on a recreational basis as well as on a commuting basis. Recreationally, you will find me here in Cupertino on the bicycle on weekends. On a commuting basis, I commute between our campuses at Google, between Mountain View and Sunnyvale. And one of my favorite commutes actually there is the trail that connects the Sunnyvale and the Mountain View campus. It's about a 4-mile trail behind Moffett Field. That's really very nice. And actually sometimes it's faster than actually taking the car going back to 101 and taking the cars. I use this usually multiple times a week to commute between the campuses.
How much have you used alternatives to cars for the purposes of this?
Well, I became an active bicyclist when I was living in Oxford in the UK, which really is a city where bicycling is the primary mode of transportation. And when I came back to the US, I kept those good habits, I guess, and use, as I said before, I use bicycle today for both recreational as well as for commute purposes as well.
What are some projects in Cupertino that you are interested in?
Well, I think first of all we have a great bicycle plan here in Cupertino, the bicycle plan of 2016. I had the opportunity to contribute and participate in the build out of it. And I think now, to me, it's all about implementation of those facilities that we have planned out there. And we have started on a path over the last 2 years to build out Class 4, separated lanes on McClellan. We started on the bike boulevard. Those to me are some great projects to get started, but I really think one of the really kind of key features of the bicycle plan is the loop, the Cupertino loop, which really takes you pretty much every corner of the city on a bicycle. And as I said, I think that many parts of that loop are completed. Many of them are in construction, and some of them are future projects that need to be scoped out and projected. One of the projects that I'm personally very excited about, because it is part of the Cupertino Loop Trail, is the big, long Junipero-Serra Trail that's currently under design and review, so to say.
What can the city of Cupertino do to encourage more bicycling and walking?
Well, I think there is multiple paths to look at this question. I think, first of all, we need the infrastructure, but I think that's going to happen over the years to come to build a robust and safe infrastructure. But I think at the same time, there is an equal amount of focus needs to be on the kind of the awareness and the excitement about bicycling. And that, to me, starts at the school level. High schools are probably a prime example for where we can look at the Safe Routes to School program that we have in place, expanding that to get those kids excited, building those habits of bicycling into schools and if not there. And to me, that requires some support from commissioners like us, being active, being outreach. For example, this past year, I was involved and participating in fundraising and getting bike repair stations into all the schools of the Fremont Union High School District and bike repair pumps into the Cupertino Union School District. Participated actively there because I really believe that school kids are the prime target that we need to get motivated and excited about using bicycles everywhere they get. And so I actively was involved in this project, not only from a fundraising perspective, put my own money in there, but also helped getting those devices installed there.
Are there any special projects we should undertake to help seniors get around Cupertino?
I mean, my take on it is I wouldn't necessarily kind of design the infrastructure for a specific target group, for a specific group of folks, because I think the infrastructure needs to be developed in a sense where it's useful for the widest possible communities, from the young folks to the more senior folks to the employees that are commuting. So it really needs to have a facility both ways. But I think we should do some unique programs for the community, the senior community as well, for them again to get them more out into walking and biking as well. Walking is also a big part of what the commission is all about there. And to me, I think that's what needs to start. I was, for example, again, in the last few years, very deeply involved in the organization and the execution of the Earth Day and the Fall Bike Festival, of the bike rides, the community rides that we have done. We've done a short ride and a long ride in both cases, and it's really good to see actually over those years how the adoption has grown, how more people have used that, and it's not only the young generation that was in the early days, but I think in the last cases we also had some senior folks participating, and it's exciting to see that.
How do we reconcile the concerns of neighbors about having trails near their home?
To me, I think a project is a good project when I reconcile kind of the three aspects of a project. To me, that's the cost is one aspect which is critical and important. Is it fiscally responsible? The second aspect is about the use. Is this a facility that's really useful and to a wide audience within Cupertino? And then the third aspect is how do we implement this project so that it's acceptable to the residents that are affected or impacted or in neighboring to them as well. And to me, I think participating and having those neighbors involved early on, getting their best feedback into the system as well, because I think very often the neighbors actually know their neighborhoods best and they know maybe possible alternative ways of implementing the same goal and the same outcome. So to me, it's an involvement process to get neighbors and everybody excited about those programs. And one of the examples that I want to mention here is the Junipero Serra Trail, where we had, as a commission, very recently a similar discussion from a cost, neighborhood perspective, and kind of the use cases. And I feel like the recommendation that we're going to send to the council, I think is a very good one, that I'm very happy about the outcome, considering all those factors.
If you could accomplish one thing next year on this commission, what would it be?
Well, most important, in my opinion, is the build out and delivery of the projects that we have been working on the plan and proposing about. In particular, to me, that means the McClellan separated class 4 lanes, bicycle lanes, the bike boulevards as well. So to me, those are some of the key things, because the moment we get those finished and completed and show them to residents and citizens and bicyclists, I think we get a lot more excitement and energy around new and additional projects that we need to fill the pipeline about as well. I think it's also important that we fill this pipeline on an ongoing basis, and I think that is part of why I'm personally very involved and active with Walk by Cupertino community as a volunteer, to really promote and get citizens out there and adopt and use some of those new projects that we have in the pipeline, and have a dream that eventually we will get the Cupertino Trail completed as well here, the Cupertino Loop Trail completed in the city as well, which I think is a real lighthouse project that I would love to see. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to finishing those projects that we have started over the past 2 years. Thank you.
So, let's get a breakdown. We'll reconvene at about 6:09. Some food and